Next page, please. Yeah, so for this presentation, I basically want to take you through 4 areas. One of which is to interact with you and reflect with you a little bit on the concept of environmental sustainability. And we shall be able also to look at why environmental sustainability actually matters. And then we will look at the commitments that are there at global level and regional level in terms of driving environmental sustainability. And then we'll look at a particular role that you as innovators will be able to play in making sure that you actually integrate environmental sustainability into your design of the devices. Now, is it possible for you to make it a little bit bigger than this?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. So I was hoping that my colleague, Dr. Quaye, will have already made a presentation on the local ecosystem in terms of COVID pandemic towards achieving sustainable development, in which he would have been able to introduce to you the concept of sustainability. But nevertheless, I think in my presentation, you can see that I would like to add that sustainability is largely about ensuring that investments to make social economic progress do integrate in a balanced manner the social, economic, environment, and environment considerations. In simple terms, it means that achieving shared and inclusive economic growth and improving social well-being without harming the environment. And many of you are aware that the pandemic has been actually a very good teacher for us. It has shown to us that that social, economic, and well-being are indeed linked to the health of nature, including its ecosystems. And therefore underlying the importance of having strengthened systems thinking in policy and decision-making, including the investments that we are going to make. And therefore, including the designs that you are going to be taking, they are going to be putting out. So the short presentation that I'm going to be doing here is going to be focused on about sustainability in the designing of medical devices. For the purpose of this talk, I use about sustainability to mean ensuring the diversity, stability, and productivity of natural resources and ecosystems. And the system and the resources that they are part of. It means our social and economic activities should minimize degradation and enhance the quality and availability of natural resources. I would like to emphasize that when we talk about and promote environmental sustainability, we are actually concerned with building the foundations for inclusive and sustainable economic growth, job creation, poverty reduction, and overall sustainable development. I will be able to now illustrate some of these aspects. Next, please. In Africa or globally, ecosystem services are estimated to make up between 50 and 90% of the total source of livelihood among poor, rural, and forest-dwelling households worldwide. In Africa in particular, we know that 62% of the population in rural areas depends directly on ecosystem services. And therefore, degradation of these services means that those people are likely to be pushed further into poverty. We know that marine and coastal resources in some of the regions in Africa contribute more than 35% of GDP. It is estimated that about 95% billion per year, okay, in terms of fishery value added is actually realized in some areas in Africa. We also know that forest and wood resources contribute an average of 6% of GDP in sub-Saharan Africa, and over 80% of the energy in some of the countries in the region actually get it from wood. And we know that biodiversity is critical for the pharmaceutical industry because 3/4 of the top global commercial prescription drugs contain plants derivatives. Okay. In some tropical, subtropical parts of Africa, environmental income is estimated or was estimated to be about 28% of the household earnings in 2014. Moreover, we know that 63% of the population in Africa relies on wood fuel and charcoal for cooking and water sanitation. Next, please. But in spite of that significant importance of environmental sustainability or ecosystem resources, we have seen that where environmental sustainability is not well taken care of, okay, economic growth, social well-being, including human health, is hurting. Because, for example, we know environmental degradation just in coastal areas alone in Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and Togo is estimated to have cost these countries 3.8 billion, or an equivalent of 5.3% of their combined GDP. And then we also know that although some health companies are making steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, there is evidence that the medical industry needs to do much more to ensure environmental sustainability. The medical sectors in just the 4 countries, US, Australia, Canada, and UK, collectively contribute 748 million metric tons of emissions every year. So you can extrapolate that and look at what the level of emissions is when you add other countries. And we also know that because of economic activity that we are involved in, we are generating a lot of waste. For example, 13 million tons of plastic waste get into our oceans every day and harm our very environmental resources, the economies, and potentially our own health. Next, please. We now know that because of COVID, there has been an increase in the production of so many things: laboratory test equipment, drugs, syringes, sanitizers, packaging, and PPEs, okay? And therefore, COVID has definitely increased the generation of waste, particularly biomedical waste. And yet we know that medical waste poses significantly higher risk to both the environment and especially to the community. And even before COVID was actually in place or in play, there were growing indications of increase of medical waste, because the compound annual growth rate of business in global medical waste bags was over 5% for the period 2015 to 2025. So you can imagine what it is now with the onset of COVID. And we know also that we are consuming a lot of resources, and you can see from there that there are projections that the resources will double by 2030, and that will have a lot of implications for greenhouse gas emissions, global biodiversity loss, and water stress. And that is why there is commitment at the global, regional, and national level to ensure environmental sustainability. Countries across the globe have signed to specific global and regional frameworks or agreements that seeks to advance environmental sustainability. I think we are all aware and we know about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which has got the 17 Sustainable Development Goals at its core. This is a requirement that this agreement be implemented, or the agenda be implemented in an integrated manner, balancing the environment and sustainable development dimensions. If you could go down. Well, be that be the case, the agenda also has specific goals that have a very big focus on environmental sustainability, which goals themselves have the social and economic dimensions integrated. These are SDGs 2, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, and 15. If you go to the details of the agenda, which are indicated in the presentation. Can I go down, please? But we also know that our countries have signed to other global agreements. For example, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. We have the United Nations Convention to Combat Drought and Desertification, and the Convention on Biological Diversity. These are very important frameworks that actually provide a basis for us to ensure environmental sustainability. At the regional level in Africa, we have what they call Agenda 2063, or the Africa we want, which among other goals actually seeks to achieve environmentally sustainable and climate resilient economies and communities. These frameworks have been translated into specific implementation policies, strategies, plans, and budget at national level. The danger, however, is that often when we hear that our countries have signed up to and are committed to implementing these frameworks, we misunderstand it to mean that the responsibility for implementation rests solely with the government. This is far from the truth. Environmental sustainability and sustainability in general is not the job of governments alone. We as individuals, businesses, and organizations have an important role to play. And that is why you as innovators can play your part to make sure that you incorporate environmental sustainability into the design of your medical devices in response to COVID-19. And it is very reassuring that we are talking about integrating environmental sustainability at the design phase, because we know the design phase of any product or service has been shown to be the most critical phase in terms of environmental sustainability. It is estimated that up to 80% of product-related environmental impacts can be influenced during the design phase. Therefore, as we innovate to produce new or optimize existing medical devices and services in response to COVID-19, it's important for you to know that they are you are at the most critical stage that offers the opportunity to strengthen the environmental sustainability profile of the devices that you are thinking or designing right now. Go ahead. When you go to literature, you will find a lot of different terminologies used for integration of environmental sustainability into design. And it can be called design for sustainability, eco-design, or green design. But generally, to achieve environmental sustainability, the medical devices that you are trying to devise now to innovate on, should seek to protect and improve health now and for future generations without really undermining the diversity, stability, and productivity of environmental resources. That takes us back to what really environmental sustainability is all about. And therefore, in your design or attempts to integrate or incorporate environmental sustainability into your products or devices, you should be able to seek to achieve, among others, some of these objectives. The design that you're talking about, the product itself in terms of its usability, recycling, transporting, should be able to be efficient in the use of scarce resources, such as water, energy, land, minerals, and other natural resources, by reducing the raw material intensity of the product, and where practical, make full use of the resource. And I do not know what you are thinking in terms of the product that you're going to use for eventually churning out your device. Your device should also minimize waste and pollution of the environment, including air, soil, and water pollution. It should heal the planet. You already heard me talking about the amount of waste that's being generated by various activities. Your device could be an opportunity to actually take up some of that waste and convert it into something very useful, okay? The device that you are considering should also attempt to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, including carbon emissions such as carbon dioxide and methane. Go down, please. Okay. The device that you are making should not undermine the resilience of communities for them to be able to cope with the changing climate and other shocks. And it should also be able to respect people and minimize inequalities. We know that some of the devices will be empowering other people and disempowering others. How do you deal with trade-offs to avoid inequalities? And of course, we should be able to ensure safety of the device over its lifetime. Yeah, for you to be able to do this, there are a number of tools that you can use, and there's a lot of literature that actually tells you what kind of tools that you can use to be able to integrate environmental sustainability into your design. My favorite tool is the life cycle assessment methodology, which does enable you to undertake an environmental impact assessment of the product from cradle to grave. That means from its birth to the time when it's disposed. It allows examination, come down please, of environmental sustainability, including during the extraction, processing of raw materials, the manufacture, the transport and distribution, the use and reuse, the collection, the storage, the recovery or recycle, the final disposal of waste, as you can see from this diagram. If you move a little bit up, I would like to show them, where you should be able to look at what do we use and where do we get to produce the device, okay? How do we actually make the device if we are to go to make the device? What are the logistics for moving the device from where we are, where it is produced, to the final destination where it is consumed? And we'll be looking at where is it sold, okay? How long will it be used? This will determine whether the thing actually going to impact greatly on the environment. If it's something that is easily spoiled or unrepairable, then you can know that you are churning out a lot of waste. And then how can the materials be used again? The material that you have used for designing or producing your device. And therefore we get back to the point of where we're talking about producing, how to source the material for producing the device again. So if you come down a little bit. So another tool that you can actually do, is opportunity is for you to make sure that your device complies with the medical technology regulations and environmental procedures and standards, okay? And there are quite a number of them, including ISO 14000 series, where you have 14001 standard on environmental management system, and 14040, which actually looks at whether you have complied with the life cycle assessment. In some countries, and I think most countries in Africa, you'll be required to do an environmental impact assessment to make sure that your product or project does not impact on the environment. You will be subject regularly to environment audits if you come down a little bit. And then you will have to make sure that we have social and environmental impact assessments done. And of course, the safety standards of the country will apply. Now, transparency is very important, and it can actually be able to help the product that you're making be environmental compliant. And so to protect the human environment, the human and environmental well-being, it is important that you ensure transparency to the consumers, regulatory authorities, and the public about the materials and the process of the device, okay? Or process of device production, it is harmful effects or the products of the product or device, whether it is repairable, recyclable, compostable. This requires a good communication and outreach strategy, which covers all important elements of the product cycle. Communication should not be a one-off, but a continuous dialogue. And that is how you can continuously be able to actually refine your device and produce a device that better meets the environmental sustainability requirements and other aspects of society's interests. You have seen that meeting about sustainability is not something that might be achieved by one individual firm. And so business partnerships offer you the opportunity to attract diverse skills, specialization, and investment that will ensure the design of devices that meet the required environment profile throughout their lifetime. I thought I should be able to take you through all these things. These are things that are not new to you, but it provides an opportunity for us to reflect and discuss them a little bit more, and maybe to consider them in your design. So I hope that you've been able to appreciate the importance of achieving environmental sustainability, the key elements of environmental sustainability that should be considered and incorporated in the design of your devices, and some tools and opportunities for you actually to be able to integrate or incorporate environmental sustainability in the design of your devices. I have provided a lot of reference resources in the document, and you can go and look at them to be able to acquaint yourself a little bit more in the literature that's available. I know you have also accessed some before. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. It was a pleasure having you, and I would pass on the podium to Dr. Quaye for her presentation. Dr. Quaye, you are muted now. Let me unmute you from my end. Dr. Quaye, can you try unmuting yourself?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry for the, can you see the screen now?
Yes, it is about to start.
Okay.
Yes,
sorry.
we can see you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So I lost the connection. Already we've had the presentation on sustainability. So I will go straight to the agri sector where I want to draw attention to. As you can see, what is a sustainable business? A business ought to be sustainable because then you are thinking about how can I minimize any negative potential that the business is supposed to impact on the environment. So whether through creation of eco-friendly products, social initiatives, or other sustainable practices. And sustainability, I'm looking at it from these three dimensions: the economic, the social, and the environment. So a sustainable business will organize itself so that it will move towards greater sustainability within the business and focus on creating more circular economy, which is very critical. You are looking at a situation where you draw resources even from the waste that the business generates. And that is a circular economy. Social entrepreneurship or socially driven businesses. For innovators, we should not only focus on money, but also the social aspect as well. So a venture will primarily, with the purpose, is to create a sustainable social benefit that uses a private sector model and also the social benefit model to sustain itself. So again, you are just not looking at the economics, the money that you are going to get, but you're also looking at social benefit as well for an enterprise to be sustainable. So here, I'll emphasize the fact that because you are looking at the sustainability point of issues, whatever profit that comes out from the business, you are not going to, your main purpose will then be to recoup, to put it back or reinvest, especially focusing on what is it that will help you attain the social goal. Because most often the social goals are intangibles. There are things that you cannot really see, but if in the long run, it pays off. So you are looking at the long run benefit of it all. So even as you are conceptualizing, looking at the novelty, the new thing that you want to bring up, the viability, that is the economic part of it, and also creating market awareness, making sure that you target the right consumers. You are also putting in place some sustainable strategies to be well positioned in the market. And this, as I mentioned earlier, would have a lot of implication for the business. So sustainable business practices will then look at intangible benefits of sustainability, focusing on the sustainability within the project, which is not a nice thing to do, but it is must have or must be done. It is just not nice doing it. It must be done. So for example, you are looking at what is it that will make you sustain the consumer preference for your product. These sustainability issues can also help you improve your brand value and competitive advantage in the market. You articulate what sustainability businesses or practices mean to your organization. And so, for example, you are looking at sustainable supply chain, reducing waste generation, or relying upon renewable energy, things that can actually last, will push you into future businesses or future generations. You enact sustainability programs. For example, you're educating your employees on what sustainability means and what is it that you can enlighten people on. For example, recycling waste products to make sure that your business becomes environmentally friendly. So you engage the workforce and you also put in the commitment to trace sustainability. It should be part of the performance indicators that you'll be tracking as a business person. Now, in the agri sector, COVID has opened up a lot of opportunities. For example, when you look at the agri sector from the value chain approach, that is from farm to fork, there are a whole lot of activities that offer a lot of opportunity for innovative minds. For example, how do we extend our improved technologies to farmers through e-means? How do you advise on business development, on advisory services as to do with even transporting your produce to the market? So there are a whole lot of it. ICT or supply chains, product development itself. There are new products coming up because of COVID. So you are looking at what is it that will meet the taste of the consumer. And these days, people are even afraid to go to the market. So you have a lot of opportunities looking at online marketing. What product can you package to market online to consumers in the agri value chain? Delivery services. People are scared to go to the eating spots to eat, but you have a lot of opportunities for delivery services. And also looking at the value chain, as I mentioned, at every stage of the value chain, there has to be some added value. And these also open up opportunities for innovators to come in to create jobs. So I would like us to look at some success stories. Here in Ghana, we have this Cosmos Innovation Space. And one of the success stories that have come up is structural services. This structural services actually is providing mechanized equipment, farming equipment to farmers at the farmers' door. So farmers do not have to stress to look out for tractor services. These services are packaged by the tractor services, and then you just pick a call and you have your tractor services. And through this activity or innovation, we have farmers, over 30,000 farmers being reached, and a lot of money generated from this particular innovation activities. Hitherto, farmers will have to go and look for the tractor services themselves. and look for all the mechanization services that they need. But truck services has packaged everything on one spot, and just a matter of call, you get that services and other complementary services that you need as a farmer. Again, agro sourcing. This is an innovative product on the market now, and basically their focus is on sourcing agricultural companies to provide a viable, cost-effective alternative to traditional waste disposal. So in the agri sector, a lot of waste are being generated. How do we dispose them of? This shouldn't be the actor's headache, but we have this innovator who is also, doing business with this sustainable waste management. Now, during COVID times, we need to build our innovative capacity, and it's good that we are having this training. And for me, can we still continue to look at importation of, for example, rice and poultry in Ghana or elsewhere, when we can build the capacity to produce? Because COVID has taught us that you cannot always look outside for food security, for nutritional security. There are a lot of opportunities in the domestic market, in the agri sector, and also extend to the regional market as well. We have to look at convenient packaging. How do we package our foods for special delivery services? New consumer lifestyle is teaching us a lot of things that the market will offer. Consumers are developing taste for traditional foods, food that can identify us, and this open up a lot of opportunities. Again, for sustainability in the agri-based system, keeping your eyes on institutions, what is it that we can do with our market? Can we create some new forms of market? That does not necessarily mean that you go to a central point where there is always filth and all of that. No, we can have some kind of clean market. We can also use our own food, which gives us a cultural identity, and tap into our social networks to come up with innovations. The issue about environment has been well explained to us, but in the agri sector, there are a lot of waste being generated. We need innovations that can tackle these waste. We can use our waste to generate energy to also fuel our businesses. How do we manage our natural resources? Again, there are lots of innovations to make sure that our next generation unborn can come and meet the resources that we are currently employing. So it's a big thank you to you. But what I will say is that keep looking at the trends. There are a lot of changes. Consumer tastes are changing. Consumer behavior is changing. In terms of the global stage, a lot of opportunities that we can tap into as innovators. And it is great that we have innovative minds on our continent. We need to give them all the support. One of the areas that probably you will have to discuss, what is it that our policies, our policies, are they supportive enough? These are questions that young people can question so that together we build a resilient economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Quaye. It was like pleasure having you on board. I would like open the session for some question answers if anyone is having. Otherwise, we'll take the break for the next session. Mr. Charles and Dr. Quaye will be willing to answer your questions if you have.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see me also? Because I have some issues with, okay. Okay, I have a question for Mrs. Quaye. So I understood that sustainability, environmental sustainability is one of the most important issues, otherwise we're going to destroy the things. But between the, so for developing some medical devices, sometimes you need to be, to have industry with a lot of pollution. Are there any, how to say, which is the right approach in order to, I don't know, make the coexistence between economic development for medical devices, for developing medical devices, and the right to preserve the environment, considering that the chemical industries for producing drugs or something like that are very, produce a lot of pollution. So is there any policy, any specific, any specific address, so something that we can suggest?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think if it's on medical, can we have the earlier speaker respond to it? Because he presented on environmental sustainability and specifically on medical devices.
Excuse me, this is what I cannot understand actually. Sorry, but I had some disturbance on my speakers. Can you repeat, please?
Hello?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Yeah, you asked about standards on environmental sustainability.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm saying that a lot of the information is in the first presentation. It's giving us a lot of standards that we need to follow. But if you are looking at the agri sector, then you look at safety, food safety issues and food safety standards, which we have a lot of actors involved. At the national level, we have rules and regulations that will guide a business that is developing, for example, products to build immune systems of COVID patients.
As best as your knowledge, are there any like funds or something to apply for?
Okay, so this one, it has to be at the national level. For example, for us, we have a whole ministry for Environmental Protection Agency that is under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation. And we have our policies. And what we are trying to do is to get a lot of funding from the UN agencies. So if you are looking for funding, it probably may not be just one person, but having partnerships and having strong connections to write a proposal that can seek for funding in the UN agencies system.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the students, people in the room? Think about also your devices and asking for support in ideas how to make those devices more sustainable. Any question? Okay, 1 second. I just... Okay, so if there are no question also for Dr. Akol. Okay, if not, I want to thank you again, both the speakers. See you at 3 p.m. East African time for the class about economics. We will leave the room open for group working. And thanks again to the speakers.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.